Welcome, everybody, to Space Cowboy Books Online, another installment of our Flash Science Fiction Nights. This one's going to be a lot of fun. Our featured readers tonight are Robin Rose Graves, A.C. Wise, and Kat Rambo. We're going to start off the evening with Robin Rose Graves, who will be reading a story entitled Endless Blue, which will also be featured in an upcoming episode of our Simultaneous Times podcast. Robin was a Riesling nominee this year, and you can find her in this year's Riesling anthology. And her stories have appeared in both Space Cowboy Books Simultaneous Times podcast and West Coast Weird magazine, as well as her poetry featured in Starline and our very own Simultaneous Times newsletter. So without further delay, I'm going to hand it over to Robin to share her story, Endless Blue.
Thank you. When her eyes opened, she was underwater. Her cheeks puffed like a rodent, squirreling away her last rationed breath. Her bedroom was a fish tank. A dead current suspended her belongings like a gelatin full of fruits. There was a light outside her window, an entire world of green and sun on the other side of a half-inch plane of glass. When she touched it, she could almost detect its warmth. The window was jammed, the door locked. The only conceivable way out was up to the surface. Her arms burned, threatened to give up entirely and allow her to sink into the darkest abyss of the ocean. Her breath was running out of viability. Defiant, she knew she was going to die. Her course altered, headed towards the dancing shag of the carpet. Let it be on her own terms. Air bubbled from her lips, water filling in displaced areas. She was water, in her nose and her mouth, in her lungs and her guts. No beginning nor end to her or the water, only one. She felt its weight, gravity calling her to the ocean floor. She longed to make it her bed, let her sleep. A cold gust of wind shook her awake. Not wind, but a current, rushing with the power of horses on a stampede. It dragged her along, up and away from her bed, creating space between the floor and her outstretched fingers. She flailed. She fought. The current was unrelenting. Her head broke through the surface. Above, a blue, cloudless sky illuminated by the oppressive shine of a burning sun. Her shriveled lungs bloomed with air. She treaded water, exhausted, yet somehow finding the strength. It wouldn't last forever. The ocean spread around her in all directions, infinite and endless blue. If she ever made it to land, she swore she would never touch water again. And that's the end.
Thank you. That was Robin Rose Graves with Endless Blue. Next up, we are going to have A.C. Wise reading a story called Tips for Living Out of Sync for Frequent Time Travelers. A.C. Wise's debut novel, Wendy Darling, which was one of my favorite reads this year, was published in June 2021 by Titan Books. She is also the author of 2 short story collections from Lethe Press and a novella from Broken Eye Books. A new collection, The Ghost Sequences, will be published by Undertow Books in October this year. Her work has won the Sunburst Award for Excellence in Canadian Literature of the Fantastic and has been a finalist for the Nebula, Sunburst, Aurora, and Lambda Awards. In addition to her fiction, she contributes regular review columns to Apex Magazine and the Book Smugglers. You can find a link to her website in the chat here, as well as both those books mentioned. I will have links for those. Without further ado, I will hand it over to A.C. Wise to read her story, Tips for Living Out of Sync for the Frequent Time Traveler.
Thank you very much. Tips for living out of sync for the frequent time traveler. Number 1, get used to saying goodbye. At least once in your journey, you will find the people who matter the most in your life don't know you yet. From their perspective, you haven't met, and they will be reluctant to trust you. They may even think you unhinged when you tell them, in turn, that you trust them with your life, and they are the only ones who can help you. As you introduce yourself to them all over again, trying desperately to make them understand who you are and how important it is that they listen to you, you may You may well feel like you are losing your best friend. You may find yourself looking into the eyes of a lover, the person who is not yet your mother or not yet your son, who knows precisely how you like your eggs and that your favorite soda is cherry lime, who has been through the worst and the best times with you and see no recognition at all. It will feel like goodbye. It will feel like the world ending and your heart breaking every single time. Number 2, get used to saying hello. See above. This may be harder or easier, depending on the people involved, but you will spend a lot of time explaining who you are and where in your timeline and theirs you are respectively, relatively speaking. Things will get confusing. You will encounter blank stares and the hurt look of someone who knows you better than you know yourself, who isn't used, as you are, to saying goodbye every single time you say hello. Number 3, always pack a sweater, a water bottle, a box of Band-Aids, aspirin, and a handful of protein bars. This is just common sense. No one likes to be cold, hungry, thirsty, or have a headache, and blisters are no fun, especially given the amount of time you generally spend running. A clean change of socks couldn't hurt either. Number 4, this is important. This is very important. Don't forget, whatever you do, shit, hold that thought. Number 5, no spoilers. The temptation to peek ahead and see how things turn out can be nigh irresistible. But if you think blisters are no fun, try paradoxes. The future isn't always bright, but untangling the time stream once you've fucked it up trying to avoid the unpleasant future you glimpsed while looking where you shouldn't have usually only fucks it up further. Similarly, sending messages to your past self as warning gets just as messy, and 9 times out of 10, whatever action you take to try to avoid the thing you're set on avoiding ends up being the thing that causes it in the first place. Try reading some Greek tragedies. You'll get the gist. Number 6, ignore items 1 to 5. Fuck the rules. Make your own rules. You don't have to accept things the way they are. You can still change it. You can still save everyone. There's still time. Number 7, trust no one. I realize this might seem contradictory or hypocritical given the number of times you expect people to take a leap of faith that you are who you say you are, that you really possess the knowledge you claim to possess, and that you do indeed have their best interests at heart. But trust me when I tell you, there are a lot of people out there who will use the moments of disorientation you will inevitably feel while flinging yourself through time to try to make you doubt your senses, to twist the situation to their own advantage and get what they want. And we can't let that happen, can we? Number 8, remember, this is important. If you forget everything else, please remember this. I love you. I love you, and I'm going to set things right. I swear, I'm going to fix it. I'm going to get things right this time. Just hold on. Number 9, do not, I repeat, do not give in to the temptation to reset the timeline. The opportunity will come up sooner or later. It always does. It's as inevitable as the creation of paradoxes while trying to avoid unpleasant futures. You will eventually stumble into a future or a past where the technology or the magic or the liminal indistinguishable intersection between the two exists to allow you to start over again. You swear to yourself you will fix things. You will set things right. But you have no idea the danger you're putting yourself in and others by doing this. Think. Is it worth it? Is it worth it to erase everything that's ever been, the lives lived, the joys, the sorrows, the experiences that shaped you and made you who you are just for the chance to save 1 life? Or 2? Or 10? What are the mathematics of compassion? The equations of sympathy? Are you willing to play God and choose who lives and who dies just because you have a broken heart? Just because you don't want to live with the fact that you fucked up? That they would all be alive if it wasn't for you? Think carefully before you answer. Would you give it all up for? Number 10, yes. Always. The answer is yes, every single time. The end.
Thank you. That was AC Wise with Tips for Living Out of Sync for the Frequent Time Traveler. Next up, we're going to have Cat Rambo with a story called Aardvark Says Moo. Cat Rambo lives, writes, and teaches somewhere in the Pacific Northwest. Their 250 plus fiction publications include stories in Asimov's, Clark's World, and the magazine of fantasy and science fiction, as well as a Nebula Award winning novelette, Carpra Glitter. Hopefully, I pronounced that right. Their most recent work is fantasy novel Exiles of Tibet, Wordfire Press, May 2021, which you will find a link to in the chat in a moment. Forthcoming is the space opera You Sexy Thing from Tor Macmillan in November 2021, as well as an anthology, The Reinvented Heart, co-edited by Jennifer Brazek. So without further delay, I'm going to hand it over to Kat to share their story, Aardvark Says Moo.
All right, I'm going to stick the link in the chat in case anybody likes the story enough that they want to go find it. So, Aardvark says moo. Aardvark says moo, says the clown, handing over the balloon animal. My overly precocious kid squints her eyes. No, they don't. She folds her arms. No 8-year-old should be that definite about anything. Whatever happened to the idea of childish sense of wonder? I was being whimsical, the clown explains. Do you understand what that word means, little girl? Now he's gone and done it. I could have warned him, but no one had consulted me since moment one of this interaction. The kid went up. The clown looked at her, started twisting a pink balloon around, and then he had to start being all whimsical. Whimsical, my child says, is playfully quaint or fanciful. A talking aardvark impersonating a cow is just dumb. At this point, a supernatural element enters my story. You may think it'd be something subtle, maybe the sort of knife-edged, was it real or not stratagem that Henry James could employ, but the fact of the matter was it was a Valkyrie walking up to look us over. Maybe a woman dressed like a Valkyrie, you're thinking. A costume party might have occurred to you, maybe, which means you're going off on a total tangent. So let me say this. Kids' birthday party, bouncy castle, hot dogs, cake. The only costume was the clown's, and it wasn't a particularly inspired one. The Valkyrie, moreover, is real, realer than real. Like a black hole of realness that makes everything around her look like faded plastic. Her armor is made of golden scales. She smells like ozone and honey and looks like an angry supermodel with no makeup. She says, Kyle Holiday, I have foretold that you die in the line of duty tonight, but I will take you to Valhalla. I'm pretty sure there's been some mistake, the clown says. That's my name, but I'm not going to die. No one thinks they're going to die, the Valkyrie says significantly. Hang on, my kid says. This is my best friend's birthday party and no one should die at it. She's delicate. She'll be traumatized for years. Take it elsewhere. What's he supposed to die of anyway? The Valkyrie listens to the air for a moment. Peanut allergy. I'm allergic to peanuts, Clown Kyle says cautiously, but that's why I don't eat anything at these gigs. The Valkyrie shrugs. No, I mean it, my kid says. No one's dying. She grabs a napkin from the table and holds it out to the clown. Maybe you breathe in some peanut particles. Tie this over your nose and face, then get out. Better a flaky clown than a dead one. The Valkyrie says, who are you to interfere with a hero's death? 1, my name is Anna Louise Mayhew, my kid says, her chin pointed at the Valkyrie. And 2, he's at a kid's birthday party. The Valkyrie listens to the air some more. This time it takes longer, and she gets a funny look on her face halfway through. Well, she says, when she finally returns her attention to us, he dies while working. There's not that many clearly defined heroes' deaths around anymore, but he faces down countless children and delights them, she adds as an afterthought. She reaches out and tweaks the napkin off the clown's face. You don't need that. You'll like Valhalla. She looks at my kid. You're Anna Louise Mayhew, huh? Something about the way she says it makes me step up and say, Anna, why don't you walk your friend to the gate? I fold my arms, look the Valkyrie over. She's about twice my size, could snap me like a twig, but she seems relaxed about it all. I say, how do you know her name? I take her later on, the Valkyrie says. We always future remember the important ones. I'm torn between pride and horror. What? When? Relax, the Valkyrie says. She takes a piece of cake and it's somehow reassuring, makes her seem a little less real and more like someone in a costume. Not till long after you're dead. They coax her out of retirement for it. She wins and saves humanity. I don't really want to know anything more than that. I say, so you'll forgive her saving the clown? It's kind of pathetic taking a clown to Valhalla, she says. Sometimes someone screws up the paperwork. This might be one of those times. Anna comes back and stands looking at the Valkyrie. I can't tell if it's fear or admiration or something else. I imagine her as a little old lady facing down some unguessable enemy, that same solemn expression. The Valkyrie wanders off and vanishes into sparks that travel up into the sky. No one else seems to notice. These sorts of things happen around my kid a lot, I've noticed. I say, you were kind of hard on that clown about the moo thing. Well, maybe, she says. I don't like whimsy, though. Aardvark goes moo, how twee is that? I bet that Valkyrie's looking forward to seeing her again. The end.
Thank you so much to everyone for coming tonight to hear these stories. Tonight you heard from Robin Rose Graves, A.C. Wise, and Cat Rambo. Our next Flash Fiction Science Fiction Night will be on October 12th. We're going to have joining us from Brazil, Rodrigo Assis Mesquita, Jeff Habiger, and Tom Purdom. So it'll be another wonderful night. Please keep in touch. Thank you so much. There's links to everyone's books in the chat, and we hope to see you next time. Thank you so much to our readers.